What happens when one of Hollywood's most respected actors sits down for what should be a simple interview, only to face a host determined to tear him down on live television? It only took 29 seconds of disrespectful questioning for Jennifer Hudson to push Samuel L. Jackson past his breaking point, creating one of the most shocking talk show meltdowns ever caught on camera. This is the story of how a legendary actor stood his ground against a host who clearly came prepared for war. The studio lights blazed hot as Samuel L. Jackson settled into the plush interview chair across from Jennifer Hudson. The audience was buzzing with excitement, expecting the usual celebrity chit-chat and promotional material. Jackson had appeared on countless talk shows throughout his decades-long career, always professional, always gracious. Today would be different. Hudson's opening smile seemed warm enough, but Jackson noticed something cold behind her eyes. The cameras rolled, and she launched straight into her first question without any of the usual pleasantries. "Samuel, let's talk about your recent projects. Some critics are saying you're just phoning it in these days, taking any role that pays well. How do you respond to people who think you've lost your artistic integrity?" The audience fell silent. This wasn't the friendly interview they expected. Jackson's eyebrows raised slightly, but his voice remained steady. "Well, Jennifer, I think that's a pretty loaded question to start with. I've been selective about my roles for over 30 years. And I stand behind every project I've been part of." Hudson leaned forward, her tone becoming more aggressive. "But come on, Samuel, we've all seen some of your recent movies. Don't you think you owe your fans better than just collecting a paycheck?" Jackson's jaw tightened, but he maintained his composure. "I think my fans are smart enough to appreciate the range of work I do. Not every film has to be Pulp Fiction to have value." "That's interesting you mentioned Pulp Fiction," Hudson shot back, clearly prepared for this moment. "Because that was over 25 years ago. What have you really done since then that matters?" The studio audience shifted uncomfortably. This was supposed to be a promotional interview for Jackson's new film, but Hudson seemed determined to attack his entire career. Jackson took a deep breath, his famous intensity beginning to surface. "Jennifer, I'm not sure what kind of interview you think you're conducting here, but I've made over 150 films. I've worked with every major director in Hollywood. I think my body of work speaks for itself." Hudson wasn't backing down. She shuffled through her note cards with theatrical precision, clearly enjoying the confrontation. "But let's be honest about the quality of those films. How many of them were actually good? How many were just you showing up, saying your lines, and cashing your check?" The camera captured Jackson's face as his expression darkened. His voice dropped to that familiar low growl that had intimidated audiences for decades. "You know what, Jennifer? I came here today to talk about my new project, to connect with fans, and to have a respectful conversation. If you want to sit here and disrespect my career, my choices, and my craft, then maybe we need to reconsider how this interview is going to go." Hudson's eyes lit up with what looked like excitement. She had gotten under his skin, and she was just getting started. "Oh, so now you're threatening me? This is exactly the kind of behavior people talk about when they discuss your reputation on set." "My reputation?" Jackson's voice rose for the first time. "Lady, you don't know anything about my reputation. You don't know how I work, how I treat people, or what kind of professional I am. You're sitting here trying to create drama for your show ratings." The audience was completely silent now, sensing that something was spiraling out of control. Hudson's producer could be seen just off camera, making frantic hand gestures, but Hudson ignored them completely. "I'm just asking the questions that people want answered, Samuel. Why are you so defensive? If you're proud of your work, why can't you defend it?" Jackson stood up abruptly, his chair rolling backward. His voice filled the studio with controlled fury. "Defensive? I've been in this business longer than you've been alive, and I've never had a host sit across from me with such obvious disrespect. You clearly came into this interview with an agenda, and it has nothing to do with journalism or entertainment." Hudson remained seated, but her voice got louder to match his energy. "So what are you saying? That I'm not qualified to ask you tough questions? That I should just throw you softball questions because you're Samuel L. Jackson? I'm saying you should show some basic professionalism." Jackson's voice boomed through the studio. "You should prepare questions that actually relate to why I'm here instead of trying to tear down everything I've accomplished in my career." The tension in the studio was electric. Audience members were looking at each other in shock, unsure whether to applaud, boo, or simply sit in stunned silence. This was not the Jennifer Hudson show they knew. Hudson finally stood up, matching Jackson's energy with her own rising voice. "You know what, Samuel? Maybe if you didn't have such a massive ego, you could handle a real interview instead of expecting everyone to kiss your feet." Jackson's eyes flashed with anger, and for a moment, it looked like he might walk off the set entirely. Instead, he stepped closer to Hudson's desk, his voice dropping back to that dangerous whisper. My ego? You're the one who brought me on your show just to ambush me with disrespectful questions. You're the one who thinks ratings are more important than treating your guests with basic human decency. The cameras captured every second of the escalating confrontation, and the studio audience sat frozen, witnessing what was clearly becoming one of the most explosive talk show moments in recent memory. Hudson smirked at Jackson's proximity, clearly enjoying the fact that she had rattled one of Hollywood's most unflappable stars. She crossed her arms and looked directly into his eyes with pure defiance. Oh, please, Samuel. You're acting like I asked you something unreasonable. I'm just doing my job as a talk show host. Maybe you're just not used to someone who won't bow down to your celebrity status. Jackson's hands clenched at his sides. The audience could see his internal struggle to maintain professionalism while dealing with Hudson's continued provocations. Your job? Your job is to make your guests feel welcome and have meaningful conversations with them. Your job is not to attack them personally and try to diminish their life's work for cheap television. Hudson laughed, a sound that cut through the studio like broken glass. Meaningful conversations? Samuel, you've done the same interview 1,000 times. Tell us about your new movie. Tell us about working with so-and-so. Blah, blah, blah. I'm trying to give viewers something real. Something real? Jackson's voice cracked with disbelief. Lady, there's nothing real about what you're doing. This is manufactured drama. You decided before I even walked in here that you were going to try to make me look bad. The studio lights seemed to burn hotter as Hudson stepped around her desk, moving closer to Jackson. Her voice took on a mocking tone that made several audience members visibly uncomfortable. Make you look bad? Samuel, I don't have to make you look bad. Your recent movie choices do that all by themselves. When was the last time you were in a film that actually mattered to anyone? Jackson's composure finally began to crack completely. His voice rose to a level that reverberated throughout the entire studio. You want to know about films that matter? I've been in movies that changed cinema. I've worked with Spike Lee, Quentin Tarantino, and every major filmmaker of the last 3 decades. I've inspired generations of actors and entertained millions of people around the world. Hudson waved her hand dismissively, as if swatting away his words. That's all in the past, Samuel. What have you done for us lately? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you're just coasting on your old reputation. The audience gasped audibly at the sheer audacity of Hudson's comment. Even her own production crew looked uncomfortable with how far she was pushing things. Jackson's face contorted with fury. Coasting? Coasting? Do you have any idea what it takes to maintain a career in this industry for as long as I have? Do you understand the dedication, the craft, the constant work it requires? Hudson shrugged with theatrical indifference. I understand that some actors stay relevant and some actors become has-beens who show up in bad movies for easy money. Which category do you think you fall into these days? That was the breaking point. Jackson's voice exploded through the studio with volcanic force. Has-been? Has-been? I am Samuel L. Jackson. I have more talent in my little finger than you'll ever have in your entire body. You sit here on your little talk show thinking you can tear down someone who's been a legend since before you knew what a movie was. Hudson's eyes gleamed with satisfaction. She had succeeded in completely destroying Jackson's composure, and she wasn't finished yet. Legend? Is that what we're calling it now? Because I think most people would call it living in the past. When was the last time anyone got excited about a Samuel L. Jackson movie? When was the last time you were the reason someone bought a ticket? Jackson began pacing behind his chair like a caged animal, his hands gesturing wildly as his voice filled every corner of the studio. You know what your problem is, Jennifer? You think because you won some awards and got your own show that you understand this business. You think you can sit there and judge artists who have been perfecting their craft since you were in diapers? Hudson's voice got even louder, matching his intensity with her own venom. My problem is that I'm tired of washed-up actors coming on my show expecting to be treated like royalty when they haven't done anything worthwhile in years. The studio audience was completely silent, watching this train wreck unfold with a mixture of horror and fascination. Some people had their phones out, clearly recording what they knew was television history in the making. Jackson stopped pacing and pointed directly at Hudson, his finger trembling with rage. Washed up? Washed up? I make more money in one movie than your entire show budget. I have fans around the world who respect my work and appreciate my contributions to cinema. You're nothing but a talk show host who thinks controversy equals talent. Hudson stepped even closer, invading Jackson's personal space with aggressive confidence. Money doesn't equal relevance, Samuel, and respect doesn't equal current success. Face it, your best days are behind you, and everyone knows it except you. Jackson's voice dropped to a dangerous whisper that somehow carried more menace than his shouting. You know what, Jennifer Hudson? I've been in this business long enough to recognize exactly what you are. You're a small person trying to make yourself feel big by tearing down people who are better than you. You're pathetic. Hudson's facade finally cracked slightly, her voice becoming shrill with indignation. Pathetic? I'm pathetic? You're the one having a meltdown on live television because someone dared to question your precious legacy. You're the one who can't handle a little criticism. Jackson laughed bitterly, shaking his head in disbelief. Criticism? This isn't criticism. This is a character assassination. You brought me here under false pretenses just so you could try to humiliate me on your show. Well, congratulations, Jennifer. You've shown everyone exactly what kind of person you really are. The tension in the studio had reached a breaking point, and it was clear that this confrontation was far from over. Hudson's face twisted with fury at Jackson's accusation. She had pushed him to his limit, but she wasn't prepared for him to push back with equal force. What kind of person I am? What kind of person I am? I'm a person who asks real questions instead of kissing celebrity butt for ratings. I'm someone who isn't afraid to hold people accountable. Jackson's laughter filled the studio, but it was cold and bitter. Accountable? Accountable for what? For having one of the most successful careers in Hollywood history? For entertaining millions of people? For working consistently for over 30 years? What exactly am I supposed to be accountable for, Jennifer? Hudson jabbed her finger toward him, her voice becoming more shrill and desperate. You're accountable for taking roles away from younger, hungrier actors who would actually put effort into them. You're accountable for showing up and sleepwalking through performances just because your name can still sell tickets. The accusation hit Jackson like a slap across the face. His voice dropped to that menacing whisper again, but this time it carried the weight of decades of professional pride. Taking roles away? Taking roles away? Lady, I earn every role I get. Directors call me because they know I will deliver exactly what they need, when they need it, every single time. That's called professionalism, something you clearly know nothing about. Hudson threw her hands up in theatrical exasperation, playing to the cameras with obvious calculation. There it is, the arrogance, the entitlement. You think because you're Samuel L. Jackson that you deserve respect regardless of what you actually bring to the table anymore? Jackson stepped forward until he was almost toe-to-toe with Hudson, his presence filling the space between them with intimidating energy. I don't think I deserve respect, Jennifer. I know I deserve respect. I've earned it through decades of hard work, dedication, and consistent excellence. Something you wouldn't understand sitting behind your desk, taking cheap shots at your guests. Hudson's eyes blazed with defiance as she matched his intensity. Earned it? When? Because from what I can see, you've been coasting on Pulp Fiction and Snakes on a Plane for the last 20 years. When was the last time you challenged yourself as an actor instead of just showing up for a paycheck? That was it. Jackson's control finally snapped completely. His voice exploded through the studio with such force that several audience members actually jumped in their seats. Challenged myself? I challenge myself every single day. I work with new directors. I explore different genres. I push myself to find something fresh in every character I play. You sit there judging my work when you don't know the first thing about what it takes to be an actor. Hudson seemed energized by his explosion, feeding off the chaos she had created. Oh please, you play the same character in every movie. Angry Samuel L. Jackson with a gun. That's not challenging yourself. That's called typecasting yourself into irrelevance. Jackson's hands trembled with rage as he struggled to find words strong enough to express his fury. The same character? The same character? I've played everything from dramatic roles to comedies to action heroes to supporting characters. I've done Shakespeare and summer blockbusters. You clearly haven't watched a single one of my films if that's what you think. Hudson laughed mockingly, the sound echoing off the studio walls. I've seen enough of your recent work to know that Samuel L. Jackson the brand is more important to you than Samuel L. Jackson the artist. You've become a parody of yourself. Jackson's voice cracked with emotion, years of professional frustration pouring out in one devastating response. A parody? A parody? I have given everything to this craft. I have studied. I have prepared. I have brought my absolute best to every single project I've ever been part of. And you have the nerve to sit there and call me a parody? The studio was electric with tension as Hudson prepared to deliver what she clearly thought would be her knockout punch. Samuel, the truth hurts sometimes, but someone needed to say it. Your career peaked decades ago, and now you're just going through the motions. Maybe it's time to retire and let the next generation take over. The silence that followed was deafening. Jackson stood completely still, his chest rising and falling rapidly as he processed what Hudson had just said. When he finally spoke, his voice was quiet but filled with absolute finality. "You know what, Jennifer? I came here today as a professional, ready to promote my work and connect with fans. Instead, I've been subjected to the most disrespectful interview of my entire career. You've insulted my craft, my dedication, and my legacy. And for what? For ratings? For drama?" Hudson opened her mouth to respond, but Jackson held up his hand to stop her. "No, I'm done. I'm done with your questions, I'm done with your disrespect, and I'm done with this interview. You want to know what kind of professional I am? A professional knows when to walk away from someone who doesn't deserve their time or energy." Jackson began unhooking his microphone, his movements deliberate and controlled despite the fury still evident in his voice. "This has been the most unprofessional experience I've ever had on television, and that's saying something, because I've been doing interviews for longer than you've been in the entertainment business." Hudson finally seemed to realize that she had pushed too far, her voice taking on a slightly panicked tone. "Samuel, wait, don't you think you're overreacting? This is just television. This is just an interview." Jackson stopped and turned back to face her, his expression filled with complete disdain. "Just television? Just an interview? This is someone's reputation you're playing with. This is decades of hard work you're trying to tear down for entertainment. There's nothing just about what you've done here today." He tossed his microphone onto the chair and looked directly into the camera. "To anyone watching this, I want you to know that this is not what professional journalism looks like. This is not how guests should be treated, regardless of who they are or what they've accomplished." Jackson began walking toward the studio exit, his voice carrying across the silent space one final time. "Jennifer Hudson, you've shown everyone exactly who you are today, and it's not someone worthy of respect." As he reached the studio doors, Hudson called out desperately, "Samuel, Samuel, come back, we're not finished." Jackson paused at the threshold, not bothering to turn around. "Yes, we are." And with that, one of Hollywood's most respected actors walked out of the Jennifer Hudson show, leaving behind stunned silence. A host who had clearly bitten off more than she could chew, and television history that would be talked about for years to come.